Jealousy is, of course, a horrible feeling for your clients. You know, if you see clients who experience jealousy, you'll know how destabilizing and horrific it can be for them, and also for people in their lives. You know, it makes them think and feel in all kinds of horrible ways. Emotional insecurity, of course, drives jealousy, and this is what I'm going to talk about. So I'm Mark Tyrrell of Uncommon Knowledge, and in this week's video I'll offer you 3 easy to use cognitive behavioural therapy techniques that you can use today with your jealous and insecure clients. I hope you find them useful and the whole video interesting, and if you do, please hit the like and subscribe button. Now, I'm going to talk a bit about what jealousy is, but also some ways that we can help our clients and ourselves, if necessary, overcome it, or at least tame it enough so that it doesn't wreck our relationships. Now, the writer Tyrrell said that it is not love that is blind, but jealousy. And that's an interesting idea. Actually, love can, as we all know, make us overlook flaws. Love can make us, if not blind, at least short-sighted in some ways. You know, that which seems in the heady days of initial infatuation to be a cute idiosyncrasy in our partner may, in the depressing days of approaching divorce, turn into an unforgivable fault. So something that starts off cute and can end up driving us nuts about our partner. But anyway, Tyrrell was at least half right. You know, chronic jealousy does bend and distort our perceptions. The green-eyed monster of jealousy clouds judgment and perspective, causing people to become possessive and suspicious, and also start to see evidence of infidelity where others see nothing at all. Because, of course, when we're looking for something, we can find it, or at least think that we found it, even when we haven't found it at all. Now, I've written before about how jealousy is more of a distortion of the imagination than a thought disorder. And the best way to treat imagination disorders like catastrophization or worry and health anxiety and all the ways that people misuse their imaginations is to use clinical hypnosis, because hypnosis deals directly with the client's misuse of their imagination, the part doing the problem. But I don't want to get ahead of myself here. But it's just worth bearing in mind that jealousy is not a thought disorder as much as an imagination disorder. It's what the person imagines that really screws them up. Now, we know that a huge array of emotional problems, including jealousy, can be caused by faulty pattern matching from past emotional conditioning. So what do I mean by pattern matching? Well, pattern matching isn't a cognitive process, it's not a thought process, but an emotional one, meaning that it works outside of and before thought. So if I go into my garage and I see a coiled hose in my garage, and I don't really sort of see what it is at first, I'll react by jumping in the air. And I'll do this about half a second before the thought comes into my mind, oh my God, there's a snake in my garage. So I'll have the emotional response a fraction before I'll think, oh my God, it's a snake. And eventually, when I'm calm enough, I'll see that it was a hose. So we have emotion or shock followed very fast by thought, or sometimes not so fast by thought. But it's important here to understand that it's not the thought that produces the emotion, but the other way around. And this is a point even some therapists fail to appreciate. This isn't to say that thought never produces emotions, but that it goes both ways. And the point is that really strong emotions tend to come before thoughts. The stronger the emotion, the more likely it is to proceed thinking. Now, a large meta-analysis of 18 studies has shown that cognitive behavioural therapy, CBT, is a whopping 70% more effective when used in combination with hypnosis than when used alone. And I think that is because human beings don't just think their way into emotional reactions, but experience them almost as a kind of naturally occurring post-hypnotic response. In other words, you can't just think differently to feel differently, because feelings tend to be stronger than thoughts. But having said that, changing bad thinking habits will help to some extent, so hence the purpose of this video. So encouraging clients to observe their own thoughts and challenge assumptions can still be highly valuable, especially if you haven't trained in inner work methods like hypnosis or mindfulness training to use with your clients. Now, jealousy, which is really fear of betrayal and rejection, often coupled with controlling behavior or producing controlling behavior, has of course got many aspects to it. Jealousy often intertwines with feelings of insecurity, fear, and low self-esteem, as well as anger and, for some, a sense of entitlement, of owning another human being, of them being our property, to be told what to wear, what to do, and so forth. So there's two types of jealousy really. There's the purely sort of low self-esteem, insecure jealous person. Then there's this sort of jealous person who's learnt to be controlling and treat other people as objects and so forth. As a practitioner, you may sometimes encounter clients who struggle with jealousy, and it can arise in various aspects of their lives, not necessarily just in romantic relationships, but also friendships or even professional settings. So while cognitive behavioural therapy may be an incomplete approach in some ways, for reasons I hope I've made clear, it can still offer effective techniques for helping clients manage and overcome jealousy, enabling them to develop healthier emotional responses and stronger relationships. Self-observation is vital if we're to understand ourselves better. We need to observe ourselves almost as if we're a third person outside of ourselves to really see what's going on with us. So how can we help our jealous clients cognitively? So bearing in mind that any cognitive approach will be perhaps incomplete without the kind of therapy that can help a client change precognitive patterns, well, there are varied ways, but here are 3 cognitive approaches that I find useful when treating jealous clients. So the first technique is this: you could ask your client to simply make a thought record. Okay, so you can introduce your clients to thought records as a way to identify and challenge their cognitive distortions. So one client, Kevin, found that when he used this self-observation exercise, it really transformed the way he felt about himself and his partner. He had never really noticed his triggers before, nor his reactions to them, and he'd been so absorbed in the experience of being jealous that it was a revelation to him to discover he could, psychologically speaking, be outside of the experience and just observe himself from the outside. This alone helped lessen his chronic jealousy. So being aware of our thoughts can be a kind of mindfulness training, because to see our thoughts, we need to stand aside from them to some extent. And when we do that, then we become more than our thoughts. Our thoughts aren't the whole of reality. So a thought record typically includes 1, trigger identifying. So we need to trigger identify the situation that instigates the jealous feeling. 2, we need to observe the emotion, so emotion observing and recording the specific emotion that comes to mind. You know, for example, it might be fear, disgust, anger, or whatever the emotion is, and then we need to be aware of the intensity. So maybe 10 being the most intense and 1 being the least. 3, thoughts observing and recording the immediate thoughts that then arose, okay, from the feeling. For example, the thought might be, I might feel angry, and then the thought might be, she prefers him to me, or he's going to leave me for someone else. So what is the thought? What's the assumption behind the feeling? 4, evidence for and against. So analysing the evidence supporting and contradicting the automatic thought. 5. Balanced thought. So at this point we want to replace the distorted thought with a more balanced, realistic perspective. So by guiding your clients through this process, you help them develop greater awareness of their thought patterns and empower them to challenge and reframe those thoughts and so forth. Okay, so often someone just feels jealous and you say, well, what happens? They say, well, I just feel jealous. But this is a way of actually breaking it all apart and, what is actually going on here. And of course, this technique sounds simple if we write it down for our clients, but we may need to help our clients actually rehearse doing this during a session with them. So we might get them to do that retrospectively. What happened? When was the time that you remember feeling really jealous? And then break it down and get them to observe it from the outside and to really see what was happening in that time. And then we want them to start doing this more and more in day-to-day life. Okay, so suggesting they can do it as therapeutic homework in the future. Okay, so technique 2 is set behavioural experiments. So behavioural therapy is predicated on the principle that we can sometimes, and to some extent, change emotional patterns by first changing what we do. For example, a person doesn't necessarily have to wait to feel confident enough before they do something. By making themselves do that something, they then can feel confident as a consequence of doing that thing they were frightened of doing. Okay, which takes some courage, of course. So it's not that we always have to wait before doing anything to feel like doing that thing. Okay, so that's the basis of behavioural therapy. If jealousy is, as I've described, a misuse of the imagination, a kind of negative self-hypnosis, then we need to help clients replace imagination with reality. Okay, or at least empirically discover whether what they imagine and what is real actually overlap at all. So Kevin, my client, thought he knew how he'd react to certain events should they happen, such as attending a party with his wife and seeing her communicating with male co-workers. That to him was the worst thing possible. So I asked him, I said, yeah, but do you know for sure what would happen in that scenario? And he said, well, he assumed that she'd be flirting with them, that she'd prefer them to him, and all these kinds of things. So I convinced him to go along and actually to a party they'd been invited to, just to see what happened, and then afterwards to write down exactly what happened and to what extent it accorded with what he'd imagined previously would happen in that party. And of course there were some interesting differences. So we want our clients to separate how close their prediction of the event corresponds with the reality of that event. How aligned to reality is their imagination. So steps for conducting a behavioural experiment can be: 1. Hypotheses. Ask your client to articulate their fears or expectations. For example, if we go to this party, my partner will spend the evening talking to someone else. That someone else being a threat. And then ask your client to write down this hypothesis. Okay. 2. Experiment. Plan an activity that tests this hypothesis. Attending the party. Asking a client to actively seek out what they'd previously avoided is a kind of paradoxical therapy and can in itself provide a powerful reframe. 3. Observation. Have the client observe what actually happens during the environment. If their partner is an incorrigible flirt, then that's a separate issue we might have to deal with. But we're dealing with inappropriate jealousy in this scenario. 4. Reflection. Discuss the outcome and compare it to the initial hypothesis or expectation. Was the client's fear justified? If so, was it completely justified? What percentage of it was justified? We want to replace imagination with knowledge. You need to know what's real in life, not just to go around imagining everything. What did your client learn from the experience? Through these experiments, clients can challenge their assumptions and develop a more balanced perspective on the situations that trigger their jealousy. And technique 3, enhance self-esteem and self-compassion. Now, as I've sort of intimated, a subset of overly jealous people are essentially narcissistic and treat other people simply as possessions. So this person has to give all their attention to me. Okay, they're mine, and so forth. They may have grown up to treat everything in life, including other people, as their property to be controlled and to be owned. And there are some people like this. Insecurity doesn't play a part, but it's not sort of low self-esteem that's necessarily driving that control freakery. So they want, in fact, to demand all the attention at all times from the person. But for many jealous clients, it's insecurity and self-doubt and self-uncertainty that's driving the jealousy. Perhaps a sense that they themselves can't possibly really be worth valuing. That surely my partner will eventually find someone else, better than me, because anyone's better than me. So some, not all jealousy is often rooted in low self-esteem, a lack of self-compassion. Clients who feel unworthy or insecure are more likely to experience jealousy, as they might perceive others as threats to their relationship or self-worth. Enhancing self-esteem and cultivating self-compassion can help clients build resilience against jealousy. So you could introduce self-compassion exercises to help your clients develop a kinder, more self-supportive relationship, a relationship with themselves. This might include mindful self-compassion. You can encourage clients to practice mindfulness when they experience jealousy, noticing the emotion without judgment and offering themselves understanding and kindness in response. They might breathe their way into a calmer state during such times and focus on seeing wider contexts of reality. We might have them examine their self-talk. Your client could practice giving themselves a talking to, as though they were someone they really care for and value. So in difficult times, they might say, perhaps writing this down or just saying to themselves things like, you're fine, you're attractive and interesting, my partner has chosen to be with me. Okay, don't be put off by those doubts. Those doubts don't have validity. They're not real. They're will-o'-the-wisps. They can evaporate. They'll soon fade away and get lost. So you can really feel confident and relaxed. So when people talk to themselves in that way, then they're showing self-compassion. Could be compassionate letter writing. Ask clients to write a letter to themselves from the perspective of a compassionate friend, acknowledging their feelings, offering support and encouragement, and telling them how jealousy is going to fade to low, normal levels. So by fostering self-compassion, clients can reduce their reliance on external validation and develop a stronger sense of inner security, which can significantly reduce feelings of jealousy. After all, always having to seek reassurance from others makes us over-reliant in some ways and drives neediness, which, as we all know, can spoil relationships. Jealousy can be a challenging emotion for clients to navigate, but with the right tools and support, it's possible to transform it into an opportunity for personal growth. So by integrating these CBT techniques and identifying and challenging cognitive distortions, conducting behavioural experiments, so seeing to what extent reality accords with preconceived imagination, and enhancing self-esteem and self-compassion, those three aspects, if we incorporate those into our wider practice, we can really empower clients to overcome jealousy and build healthier, more fulfilling relationships. And of course, relationships are so important because for most of us, I think it's fair to say, relationships are what matter most in life. When you help your clients improve their relationships, you're essentially helping them have a happier and more fulfilling all-round kind of a life. So I hope you found that useful, and if you did, please hit like and subscribe. I'm Tyrrell of Uncommon Knowledge, and if you'd like to subscribe to my email newsletter, you can find it over at unk.com, that's unk.com/blog. And thanks for watching.